What happens when the rudest man in Greece meets the wisest philosopher of Athens? A clash so legendary, people are still laughing and thinking about it 2,000 years later. Plato, the great student of Socrates, built his academy to teach people about the higher world of ideas. He believed the physical world is imperfect and only pure ideas, the forms, are real truth. But then comes Diogenes, who believed all of this was nonsense. He thought Plato's forms were nothing but hot air. Diogenes believed in living simply, like a dog. No need for fancy theories when life itself is simple. One day, Plato defined man as a featherless biped, basically a two-legged animal without feathers. Diogenes heard this, and he couldn't resist. He plucked all the feathers off a chicken and threw it into Plato's academy. "Here is Plato's man," Diogenes shouted. The room exploded with laughter. From that day, Plato's students changed the definition of man to add, "with broad flat nails." For Diogenes, this was proof that philosophers waste time on meaningless theories. He once mocked Plato's lectures by simply eating loudly during them. Plato said, "Man seeks truth through reason." Diogenes replied, "I seek truth through living." Who was right, the thinker in the academy or the madman in the streets? Plato admired order and structure. He wanted a perfect society ruled by philosopher kings. Diogenes hated this idea. He believed rules, laws, and even kings were chains on human freedom. Once, Plato described man as a political animal. Diogenes barked back, "I am a dog, not an animal for your politics." This clash wasn't just comedy. It was a battle between two worldviews, idealism versus cynicism. And that's only the beginning. Wait till you hear how Diogenes roasted Plato in front of the most powerful men in Athens. Plato loved talking about justice and the perfect state. Diogenes thought it was all empty words. One day, Plato was giving a serious lecture about the meaning of justice. Diogenes interrupted by dragging a rotten fish into the classroom. He shouted, "Here is your justice. Try eating this when you're hungry." For Diogenes, justice wasn't about theories. It was about living honestly, without greed or lies. Plato believed education and reason could make society better. Diogenes believed education was useless if people didn't control their desires. He once walked through Plato's academy, stomping his dirty feet on Plato's carpet. When Plato asked why, Diogenes replied, "I am trampling on your vanity." Plato wanted truth in polished words. Diogenes wanted truth in raw action. Plato said, "The wise should rule." Diogenes said, "The free should rule themselves." Plato described man as a political animal. Diogenes just barked like a dog in response. For him, politics was just a game of power, nothing to do with truth. He believed the more rules a society had, the less free its people were. Plato wanted an ordered city. Diogenes wanted a free individual. Which would you choose? Diogenes even mocked Plato's idea of philosophers as kings. He said, "If you want a ruler, find a dog. They're more loyal than kings." Plato dreamed of a perfect society. Diogenes asked, "Why dream when you can live free right now?" This rivalry wasn't just personal. It was a war between two ways of living, abstract ideals versus raw simplicity. One day, Plato invited important guests to his academy. Diogenes decided to crash the party. As Plato spoke about the higher world of ideas, Diogenes sat down and began eating beans noisily. The guests were shocked. Plato whispered, "Why are you eating during my lecture?" Diogenes replied, "Because I am hungry." To Diogenes, truth was not about words, it was about living with nature's needs, like hunger. He even mocked Plato's idea of the soul being higher than the body. Diogenes said, "I'd rather have a full stomach than empty words about heaven." Plato's followers admired philosophy as noble and elegant. Diogenes believed true philosophy was shameless and honest, even if it looked ugly. He once walked through Plato's lecture hall carrying a lantern in broad daylight. When asked why, he said, "I am looking for an honest man." Plato thought truth was hidden in the realm of perfect forms. Diogenes thought truth was hidden in people's daily behavior. Plato argued that luxury and order make civilization. Diogenes laughed at luxury as a prison. He even rolled his barrel up and down the street to show that hard work is more useful than empty talk. Plato described philosophy as preparation for death. Diogenes described philosophy as preparation for life. Two opposite visions. Plato's philosophy aimed at eternity, Diogenes aimed at the present. Plato wanted to escape the world's imperfections. Diogenes embraced imperfection as the real truth of life. Plato believed knowledge could make men virtuous. Diogenes thought knowledge without action was useless. He once said, "I'd rather be a madman living freely than a wise man trapped by books." Plato wore elegant robes to show dignity. Diogenes wore rags to show that dignity comes from the soul, not clothes. He even mocked Plato's academy by saying, "I see walls, but no wisdom inside." Plato described love as the soul's search for beauty. Diogenes described love as a natural instinct, nothing more. Plato's love sounds poetic. Diogenes' love sounds shameless. Which feels more real? Plato attracted noble students and kings to his academy. Diogenes attracted common people, beggars, and children in the streets. He showed that truth doesn't belong to palaces, it belongs to anyone brave enough to live it. Plato said happiness is harmony of the soul. Diogenes said happiness is owning nothing and fearing nothing. One looked up to the stars, the other looked at the street. Both searched for happiness. The rivalry became legendary, symbolizing two opposite ways of philosophy. Plato's path, order, ideas, eternal truths. Diogenes' path, freedom, honesty, and living simply. Who do you think was closer to the truth? Plato in his academy or Diogenes in his barrel? Even today, their debate lives on. Do we chase ideals or do we embrace reality? So whose side are you on? Plato, the dreamer of ideals, or Diogenes, the dog who barked at lies? Tell us in the comments. I'd love to know.